Now that we have our dog leash in a fun and unique fabric, it's time to make the matching poop bag. Hi, I'm Christina, and I love to digitally apparel pattern, creating unique pieces of wearable art for myself and sometimes for my brother's pets. And today we're going to make a matching poop bag that will attach onto the leash. It is always handy to be able to have a roll of your little dog's poop things on you. And what's even better is when it can attach to the leash. So let's gather our materials and get sewing. We're going to start by gathering all the materials we need, which is the cute fabric, a zipper, and if you so choose for easily access to clip it onto stuff, a small swivel ring. Then we are going to cut out our pattern piece. So we're going to just take the pattern and cut it out. If you choose to not cut it out, but you want to trace it out, that is also a perfectly acceptable way to do this. Now that we have the pattern cut out, I'm actually going to flatline my cotton to a thicker, heavier duty material. This way I have a little bit more structure to my poop bag, and it just gives it a little bit more stiffness. You do not have to do this. I just found that the cotton was very lightweight and I just wanted a little bit more oomph. So I just took a scrap of a canvas that I had from a previous project, and I'm going to start by tracing out my pattern straight onto that canvas. Once I have the pattern traced onto the canvas, before I cut it out, I'm just going to cut out the outline of it, not actually cut out the cut lines. This way I can then pin it straight to my cotton fabric, and I can cut them out together. That way you can make sure the grain lines match up better and all that important stuff. Now that I have it fully pinned together, I'm going to cut out the pattern. And I also can't forget about this last little piece. But then I also can't forget about cutting out the strap. So I'm just going to mark this strap out. Again, cutting around. Then we'll cut this out, pin it to my cotton. Well, I cut it first. We're going to pin it to my cotton so that I can easily flatline them. So I'm going to take my patterns and my zipper over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to start by flatlining, which is just basically marrying the two pieces only in the seam allowance. So this stitch won't be seen at all. So I'm just stitching all the way around the pattern as close to the edge as I can and pulling out my pins as I go. That way they are flatlined together, and now I can treat them like one pattern piece and not have to worry about it. We're going to do the same thing with the large poop bag pattern. We're going to stitch all the way around, making sure that you are staying in the seam allowance area. If you accidentally cross over into the not seam allowance area, you can definitely pick it out at a later date, but if you can stay within that 1/4 inch seam allowance, it's going to make your life so much easier in the long run. Now we're going to move over to the ironing board, and we're going to just do some prepping before we sew. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out the small rectangle piece that we're going to use to create the hole. You can also create the hole with a grommet. You could create the hole with a large buttonhole. I just wanted to create it with some fabric and a facing. So we're gonna just iron down the 4 edges of this little facing piece. I'm doing 2 at a time so that I have a nice little square. Give it a nice press. Then I'm going to move on to the strap. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to fold in the 2 edges. And again, I'm going to try to do this in one go. It doesn't need to be folded in very much. It's a 1/4 of an inch and it didn't quite go, so I'm going to do them one at a time. There we go. And now we're going to fold it in half. That's giving me a little bit of problems. Let's see here. There we go. And we're going to give it a nice good iron right now. Now, if the iron doesn't make it want to stay, you can give this a pin, but I find that if you give it a really good press, it will stay where you need it to be, and you won't have to worry about it too much. But you can throw a pin in that as well to make sure it does what you want it to do. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm also going to prep for the zipper. So I'm going to be turning down my 1/4 inch on my 2 edges. Just like so. There we go. Now it's time to move back to the sewing machine. And we're going to start by just doing edge stitching around our little strap. So I'm going to make sure it's nice and crisp, and I'm going to sew all the way around it. It is a small enough piece that I'm not worried about going the same direction. I'm just going to go all the way around. Nice little cute little strap. There we go. I can set that aside. The next thing I am going to do is I'm actually going to do my hole. So I'm going to kind of mark my hole with pins so I can see where it's going to be wanting to lay on the opposite side. I'm going to place my fabrics right sides together, and I'm going to pin my corners, making sure that the balls of the pins will not get hit by the needle at all, because I'm just going to leave them in as I sew all the way around. Now, when you're doing a super tiny stitch like this, I always find it helps to have a smaller stitch length, because you're not trying to go as far in each stitch. And it will just kind of help keep it a little bit smoother of a line. You still may have to put your needle down and readjust slightly each way. And then again, make sure you backstitch at the beginning and end. There we go. Beautiful little circle created. We're going to go ahead and cut it in half. And now we're going to cut out that center bit. So I'm going to go ahead and snip as close as I can to that stitch line. And I'm just going to cut away as much as I can, leaving a very little seam allowance. This, because we also did a small stitch, that will also help, but you just want to make sure it's as best you can. Then we're going to pull that fabric to the inside. Give it a nice good press. I kind of like to do a finger press and a working around, but then you are going to want to move back over to the ironing board and really give this a good press. If you don't do this, it's going to look kind of frumpy, or it'll look a little, it won't look as nice just because it's not getting that crisp corner set. So you always want to move back to the iron and really give it a nice crisp press. Once we have that all pressed, we're going to move back to the sewing machine, and I'm just going to do a box square all the way around. Now, if you don't like the look of that, you can do that much more and do a circle and everything. Since I have the box, the end look is very box shape, and I'm using a black thread, so it's not going to do anything weird to the actual pattern, so the stitch line will just blend in, so I am not worrying about that too much. If you do worry about that, you can, like I said at the beginning, there's multiple other ways you can do this. You can do this with a grommet, you can do this with a large buttonhole, you can actually shape it exactly the way you want. There's a lot of different ways you can go. This is just one of the ways I chose. This is just the way I chose to do it for this project. We're going to clip all our threads. And now we're going to move on to adding on that zipper. So I'm going to take my zipper. Now I do have a longer zipper here than I actually need, and that's because I will be trimming it off completely on both sides. I'm going to start by just sewing it down on one edge of the zipper, just top stitching that 1/4 inch that I turned back, making sure to back stitch at the beginning and end. Nice stitch, but I do want the zipper to be seen. I think it's a fun color. I think it adds a fun detail. If you do not want your zippers shown, you can butt them up much closer. Next, I'm going to do the other side of the zipper. So what you're going to do here is you want to make sure that your zipper lines up nicely. So I'm going to fold it and make sure that the top and the bottom line up really close. You want to make sure that they line up, because if they don't, it's going to throw your pattern off later. So make sure you take care to place your zipper properly. Once I have it placed, I'm going to use a pin to make sure it's going to stay exactly where I need it to. And then once I have it, I'm going to open up my zipper so I have a little bit easier access in actually sewing where I want. And I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and sew the zipper in. There we have it. We're going to clip our threads. And now we have our zipper in. Now I will be chopping this off later. I'm not going to do it yet because when I chop the zipper off, I want to make sure that there's no chance that my head will accidentally come off. So I want to do that at the very end after I have the bag basically made. So I'm going to flip the bag inside out so that I can finish sewing this guy together. The next step we're going to do is we are going to sew the 2 square ends together. We're just going to do a straight stitch 1/4 inch away from the edge across both sides. There we go. Once I have both sides, we are now going to pull out, we're going to flatten the seam that we just did, and we're now going to go across the zipper and the bottom. This will create a nice square bottom. We want to do that on both the zipper side as well as the other side. So I'm going to start at the bottom of my zipper. Now the first time I did this, as you can see, I forgot to put my little strap in. So I'm just going to quickly take out a little bit of the strap. And then the other thing I also forgot when I was actually putting in the strap, I forgot to put on the swivel hook. So 2 things to remember. At the bottom of your zipper, that's where you want to put the strap. I forgot. Make sure you don't forget that. And also, at the bottom of your zipper where you put your strap, make sure you put on your D-ring swivel, or your D-hook swivel thing. Make sure you put that on so that you don't have to undo it again. I definitely had to undo it twice for this project by accident. And then we're just going to go ahead and sew the other side as well. Now when I'm working on the opposite end, I actually want to press that seam open. I want to press it open just to help it look a little bit nicer, and because that's how the zipper is going to want to lay. So I want to try to get the same amount of fullness next to everything, and it's not too bulky on one side and not bulky enough on the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the first opening of that zipper. And it's being a little cranky with me, so I'm just going to pin it to make sure it stays exactly where I want it to stay so that there's no massive holes or anything. I'm going to get to that zipper and I'm going to make sure that I backstitch at the beginning and the end, but I also want to backstitch over the zipper because I'm going to be using that as the stop ends. Now I'm just going to go ahead and cut off my zipper. It is now fully in. You don't have to worry about it. You want to make sure that all your sewing's good. and that you're not going to pull your zipper pull off now. And then you also want to melt the ends of that zipper so that they stay nice and together. So I always pull up my lighter and melt down my zipper tape. And there we have it. We now have our little poop bag ready to flip right side out, just like so. Get those corners nice and pointed. You can either just keep working at it, you can get a quick point turner to help get those point turned out. And here we go. As you can see, it is super cute. And look at how cute this little poop bag turned out to be. I am so excited how it turned out, and what's even better is you can clip it right onto your leash and it'll stay right there. Now, you definitely saw that I forgot to originally put on my little hook there, but it's something that was easily fixable that I quickly just undid and redid so that I would be able to attach it easily to my dog leash. If you are looking for this pattern, make sure to look in the description below. You'll be able to find it down there, as well as some of the other fabrics and materials that you might want to use while creating this little poop bag. Thank you for joining me along the way of making this fun little poop bag that matches our leash, and I look forward to seeing you in some of my other videos. Happy sewing!